Well, coming up on today's show, what happened today with Tesla, why Elon Musk wants to take the company private, what it means for the cars and what it means for you and other EV makers. Well, good morning, good afternoon and good evening, wherever you are in the world. Hello and welcome to the Wednesday, the 8th of August edition of EV News Daily. It's Martyn Lee here with the news you need to know about electric cars and the move towards sustainable transports. Well, it was just after 5 p.m. my time in the UK when Twitter kind of exploded with Elon Musk's announcement, and then there would be 12 tweets in a row that for many would change the EV paradigm in their world, whether it's because they're investors or whether it's because they are car makers making cars to go up against Tesla. Or maybe as a customer, an existing customer or a possible future customer, and you were thinking of buying a Tesla one day. It all means something. I'll attempt to answer those questions on today's podcast. What I won't do is go super deep into the financials. This isn't a financial podcast. I'm more interested in the move towards sustainable transport on a scale of what it means for you and I. The cars we drive, how we power them, who makes them, how much they'll cost, all those kind of things. But I'm not a financial investor. So whatever I say, it's simply from the angle of wanting to see electric cars. I imagine if you, like me, think anything similar, you want to see as many electric cars on the road as possible. Well, earlier on today, there was a tweet from Elon Musk that some people didn't even take seriously. The tweet was this, and I quote, "I'm considering taking Tesla private at $420. That is per share. Funding secured. Full stop." He followed it up with simply 420. Then he followed it up with, "Good morning, smiley face." Brilliant. And I think that's probably at one point somebody thought, is he okay? Is he joking? Well, he went to continue. He answered a question from Fred Lambert at Electrek about who would own and control the company if he took it private. And Elon Musk said this, and I quote, "I don't have a controlling vote now and wouldn't expect any shareholder to have one if we go private. I won't be selling in either scenario." But it was at that point that people started thinking, he's serious about this. And it kind of beggars belief when you look back at it now that he wouldn't be serious, because he'd get in enormous trouble if that was a bit of a joke. And then an announcement did come. And this was a letter, an open letter that he has written to explain his position. I'll read you pretty much most of it, actually. "Earlier today, I announced that I'm considering taking Tesla private at a price of $420 per share. I wanted to let you know that my rationale for this and why I think this is the best path forward. First, a final decision has not yet been made, but the reason for doing this is all about creating the environment for Tesla to operate best. As a public company, we are subject to wild swings in our stock price that can be a major distraction for everyone working at Tesla, all of whom are shareholders. Being public also subjects us to the quarterly earnings cycle that puts enormous pressure on Tesla to make decisions that may be right for a given quarter, but not necessarily right for the long term. Financially, as the most shorted stock in the history of the stock market, being public means that there are large numbers of people who have the incentive to attack the company. I fundamentally believe that we are at our best when everyone is focused on executing, when we can remain focused on our long-term mission, and when there are not perverse incentives for people to try to harm what we're all trying to achieve. This is especially true for a company like Tesla that has a long-term, forward-looking mission. SpaceX is a perfect example. It's far more operationally efficient, and that's largely due to the fact that it's privately held. That's not to say that it will make sense for Tesla to be private over the long term. In the future, once Tesla enters a phase of slower, more predictable growth, it will likely make sense to return to the public markets. Here's what I envision being private and would mean for all shareholders, including all of our employees. First, I would like to structure this so that all shareholders have a choice. Either they can stay investors in a private Tesla, or they can be bought out at $420 per share, which is a 20% premium over the stock price following our Q2 earnings call, which had already increased by 16%. My hope is for all shareholders to remain, but if they prefer to be bought out, then this would enable that to happen at a nice premium. Second, my intention is for all Tesla employees to remain shareholders of the company, just as is the case at SpaceX. If we were to go private, employees would still be able to periodically sell their shares and exercise their options. This would enable you to still share in the growing value of the company that you have all worked so hard to build over time. Third, the intention is not to merge SpaceX and Tesla. They would continue to have separate ownership and governance structures. However, the structure envisioned for Tesla is similar in many ways to the SpaceX structure. External shareholders and employee shareholders have an opportunity to sell or buy approximately every 6 months. Finally, this has nothing to do with accumulating control for myself. I own about 20% of the company now, and I don't envision that being substantially different after any deal is completed. And he finishes, basically, I'm trying to accomplish an outcome where Tesla can operate at its best, free from as much distraction and short-term thinking as possible, and where there is as little change for all of our investors, including all of our employees, as possible. The proposal to go private would ultimately be finalised through a vote of our shareholders. If the process ends the way I expect it will, a private Tesla would ultimately be an enormous opportunity for all of us. Either way, the future is very bright, and we'll keep fighting to achieve our mission. Thanks, Elon. So that is pretty much the full letter. Looking at some of the reaction that was coming in then to the news, Ross Gerber, who is a big Tesla fan and financial guy, says, I have no intention of selling my Tesla shares at $420 if there is a tender. The stock is worth $570 based on 2019 revenue. Elon, I'm keeping my stock. Bloomberg says the transaction described by Elon Musk for Tesla would be the largest leveraged buyout in history. Tom Randall says the biggest downside for Tesla to go public is that it makes it harder to raise capital. If you're Musk and you want to go private, the best time for it is when you're pretty certain you won't need any more massive capital raises. The market hasn't come to the same conclusion. And Bloomberg pointed out that after his first tweet, Elon Musk's net worth, get this is incredible, Elon Musk's net worth went up 900 million. 900 million. You did hear it correctly the first time after that tweet. That is incredible. Well, on Bloomberg earlier today, they were certainly having their fun in dissecting all the news, and this hopefully is a quick cut that puts it in perspective from Jason Kelly on Bloomberg.
This is the exact language that every private equity guy uses when they're trying to pitch someone on going private, that you'll have less distraction, and certainly you don't have to look much further than Michael Dell for evidence of that. He teamed up with Silver Lake a few years ago, took Dell private, and has been very successful.
And a little cut from long-time Tesla watcher and writer and commentator Dana Hull.
Yeah, I mean, Musk said financing is secure, and we're not clear. Does that just mean the Saudi Arabian sovereign wealth fund, or clearly it must be many more funders than that? But who is he talking about? And the blog post doesn't specify any of that. It's also not clear what the timing is on this. Like, I mean, there's been no SEC filing. We're not sure when there is a board vote. Presumably the board is on board with this, but we haven't heard from any of them today. We really don't have anything beyond Elon's tweets of today and the blog post.
And I'll just pick up on what Dana said there in terms of where the money is coming from. And it's something that I said a couple of times on Twitter today, which is 70 billion, which is what this could cost. Some arguing over that figure. Could be 80 billion, but then again, Elon owns a fifth of the company, so it could be less. Even if it was 80 billion, that's not a lot of money. I mean, that's a crazy thing to say. But it's not a lot of money, and I'll tell you why. Let me just jump in the DeLorean and go back, way back, to this morning, before Elon's tweet, before any of this news. And Simon Alvarez at Teslarati said this: Tesla shares were being boosted in Tuesday trading amidst reports that Saudi's public investment fund purchased a significant stake in Elon Musk's led company earlier this year. The PIF, the Public Investment Fund, is expected to compromise between 3 and 5% of Tesla's shares in what could be seen as yet another bold bet by Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. News of Saudi PIF's position in Tesla was reported by the Financial Times here in London in the UK, citing people with direct knowledge of the matter. The position is estimated to be worth 1.7 to 2.9 billion, considering Tesla's current share price, making the Saudi Crown Prince's fund one of Tesla's biggest investors. Data from Bloomberg estimates that the Saudi PIF currently stands as one of their top 8 shareholders. End quote. So what is a Saudi PIF, a public investment fund? Well, that was set up in 1971 to support projects of strategic significance to the Saudi economy, and until this year was focused mainly in its home market. Holds about 130 billion of assets in listed Saudi companies, including the Saudi Basic Industries Corp, the world's second biggest chemicals manufacturer, and the National Commercial Bank, the kingdom's largest lender. Well, the fund aims to increase its assets to 400 billion, with a B, by 2020, from 230 billion currently. So what's a wealth fund? Well, the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund is actually quite small change when you look at things like the Norway Global Pension Fund, worth at the moment, I think, $1 trillion. Yeah, the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority and China Investment Corp, I think they're 800 to 900 billion dollars. The Kuwait Investment Authority, Saudi Arabian Monetary Agency, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority Investment Portfolio. These are all worth, as far as I could find out today, more than $500 billion. So like I say, somebody making a significant but still $70 billion investment in Tesla. If Tesla is the new ExxonMobil, if Tesla's not just another car maker, if they are one of the big energy companies of the future, it's not that big an investment, really. And people were kind of mocking me on Twitter, and it was a ridiculous thing to say when you don't know the background. 70 billion is not that much money, but 70 billion, it's not that much money. The big question then, what does it mean for the Tesla cars? Well, it'll mean they'll crack on if it's a private company and do what they do and not need to tell us anything about what they're doing until they're ready to tell us. Ultimately, it will give them more freedom to do whatever they want without having to report to the market every 3 months. There'll be nobody taking down Tesla apart from Tesla's competitors. When you come to talking about shorting stocks, I kind of glaze over because as far as I understand it, shorting Tesla means you're betting on a company failing. And because Tesla is so crucial and so central to the success of electric vehicles, and why, if you haven't heard my argument on this before, without Tesla, none of the others would be doing it. So they are forcing every other car company to make electric cars because either all the other big car makers will make electric cars or they won't have a business at some point. They're just dragging their heels until they really, really have to. And then they'll make great cars, by the way. I'm not saying the cars that they'll make won't be fantastic. It's just not in their interests to write off all of that investment in diesel factories and petrol and combustion engine factories. So what does it mean for Tesla? A bright, bold future away from that constant magnifying glass of their financials. Everybody will still be obsessed about their cars. You and I will still want to know what's the latest thing with the Model 3, the Model Y, the Tesla Semi, the Roadster, and the next, and the next, and the next thing they make. But there won't be that pressure on them to constantly justify what they're doing. What does it mean for the other car makers? A big day for them as well. Because up until now, the nature of being a public business, they've had a lot of access to what Tesla's doing and their financials and insight into their business as a way of benchmarking them against what Tesla's doing. If Tesla go private, well, that all goes away and they'll really have much less insight apart from the usual strategic insight that happens within all industries of knowing what your competitors are doing, but far less access to that. So maybe they'll up their game because they'll want to hedge their bets a little bit. Well, Tesla could be coming out with a better car than we know, so we better make a better VW, a better Audi, a better BMW, a better Toyota or Nissan. Let's hope so. And what will it mean for you and the EVs that you and I want to drive in the future? It's enormously positive news. Fingers crossed, eh? Well, thank you very much for bearing with me for this, because if I didn't go into it in enough detail, I probably would have had a bit of a kicking to say it's the biggest story around, why didn't you cover it? And yet I've got a whole bunch of other stories that were ready to go today, but how are we doing for time today? Thank you for bearing with me today. Thank you for being a Patreon producer. If you just signed up, only launched just a couple of days ago, and already overwhelming support for this podcast, and how, fingers crossed, we're doing our own little bit together as a community to enhance and move forward electric vehicles around the world. Hello to Alexander T. Nelson. Alexander, thank you for joining the party. John Heaton's joined as a producer. Thank you, John Heaton. Leo also signed up as a producer. Only got your first name, Leo. If you want your second one read out, let me know. Of course I will. John H. Mayer signed up as an executive producer of the show. John, thank you for your support. Justin Cockett is a new producer of this show. Hello to Phil Roberts, who is another podcast partner. And Phil, I'm really looking forward to working with you and finding out about the things that you're doing and the ways the podcast can help let everybody know about what you are up to. Hi to Barry Peniston. Hello, Barry. Thank you very much, Barry Peniston, for being a producer of this show. And S. Billy. That's all I've got for you. I've got your Yahoo address, but I won't read that out. S, thank you very much for supporting us on the podcast here at EV News Daily. If you want to check us out on Patreon, yes, you can do that. If you want to have a look at patreon.com/EV News Daily, you are more than welcome, but don't feel that you need to. Have a little think about Patreon today or tonight or this morning or whatever you are doing. Next time you get 5 minutes, patreon.com/EV News Daily. And absolutely no pressure at all. This podcast will always be free. By the way, your support will just make it much, much better. In the meantime, there are a previous 204 episodes, and if you've missed any of them, I promise they're not all about Tesla. In fact, yesterday's, if you haven't heard episode 204, I don't think we mentioned them more than a couple of times in passing because there wasn't too much news going on yesterday. And loads of interviews and specials for you to listen to from every Saturday. If you've missed any, I do urge you to go back and listen to a few because a lot of them are still very much in dates. Thank you very much for finding us on the socials by looking for EV News Daily. Have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you tomorrow.